changes people.
Learn to say thank you. And the same thing with the women. Learn to say thank you.
People come to me and say, Pastor, I'm unlucky with love. Nobody's unlucky with love. You are unlearned, uninterested, uninvolved, uncommitted, not unlucky.
Can you love your wife and trust love the church and still have crisis? No, you didn't. You are using your wife. Can you submit yourself to your husband and still have crisis? No.
So Stephanie, for those of us who want to actually have a beautiful, long-lasting relationship, what on earth are we doing wrong?
So what you're seeing on media is this excitement of like, when I get married or when I'm in this committed relationship, it's all exciting, right? So in essence, your intention is for someone to constantly make you happy, to constantly meet your needs, to constantly be all about you. And you lose sight on the other person. And so if you're coming into something that involves two people, but your intention is self-focused, at some point it's going to break. Because at what point are both people serving each other? And rather than just focusing on the expectation of serve me, serve me, serve me, and it's not about serving each other. And so the intention of why people are getting in relationships really has to be qualified. But if you're only hype on emotions and you don't really get to know the soul of a person, how they think, how they feel, how they live, their decision making, their habits, the way they see life, when you start to do life with them and the real comes in and you don't know what to do, you can't handle it. And it's like, oh, let me go to the next one.
Okay, there's so much there. So you actually said what qualifies them.
Yes.
So let's actually talk about the qualifications, if you will,
Yeah.
of what makes an amazing husband or partner and what makes an amazing wife.
Amazing wife. Starting with an amazing husband, we still see that men bring in this sense of leadership to a home. No matter, like women are killing it. Even look at this pocket, women of impact. We are killing it, right? But at the end of the day, a woman still wants to enter that feminine space. When she's home, there's this space where she wants to feel loved and seen and nurtured and taken care of, right? Not in a sense that makes her idle or ineffective, because women are powerful and they have a purpose in this world that is a force in itself, right? But when a woman is around a man brings in this sense of leadership, this sense of safety, this sense of, in his decision making, but he's being mindful of the woman, right? I think where many women have felt oppressed by men is this sense of that the man is making decisions that is absent of her emotions, absent of her intelligence, right? But I think when you think of the qualities of a good man, number one, he's a good leader, right? And so to be a good leader, you have to be a student of something. You have to be a student of something that brings you to a place of humility, brings you to a place of knowing how to be a good steward, brings you to a place of knowing how to love. What is he following? Who are the people in his ear? That's why, like, as a Nigerian as well, our families always say, like, you marry a person's family. And what they mean by that is whoever you're getting married to, you're also marrying the people that influence him. And so he has to be a good leader, but that is also qualified by what shapes his leadership, right? I think women should always be intrigued by what books do you read? What are your favorite movies? What are the things you listen to? What are the podcasts you listen to? Because when you know how a man thinks, you're going to know how he leads.
Growing up, for me, I'm very traditional. So growing up, I saw my dad sit at the head of the table. He was the man of the house. He was never abusive. He was very respectful. He was very dominant. And I very much admired that. Then you cut to, I get older as an adult and I get told by other women that women should never follow. Women should always be the leader. You need to be the equal. So I went really hard. I didn't go quite hard into saying I was a feminist, but I was definitely for pro-women. And what I realized in my aging is that, I absolutely can be a freaking badass. I can be strong. I can be confident. I can be independent. And I can also feel very comfortable in having my husband lead. And that doesn't make me weaker.
Exactly.
But how much of that do you think holds us back? Because when you say, find somebody who is a leader, do you find pushback in today's society where people are saying so you want us to follow?
No, absolutely. I think because even the word submission is like a trigger word for women. Like, I'm not going to submit and da-da-da-da-da. But when you also look at it, and I think more times we need to learn about, the woman needs to understand the man needs to understand the woman. Most men will tell you their love language is respect. There's a way that we are wired that is so innate to us. And when we go out of, how we were designed, what we're met with is a lot of tension and a lot of short-lived relationships. because I get into it from a place of, chemicals and hormones and excitement or whatever. And then I realize, this is not what will work for me long term. You see how women will confuse sex with commitment. Right? So they look at a man who just loves the sexual energy or loves the sexual connection with the woman. And that's how they end up, getting married or whatever. But then he wakes up and he's like, I never really loved you. I just enjoyed this. Right? Because they can disconnect the two. It's not the same for men and women, right? A man can have sex without being in love. With a woman that, she could, but it's much harder.
Yeah, I actually heard a study that men can keep having sex and not activate their oxytocin.
Oh, yes.
But a woman can start having sex and not activate it, but it then does.
It will.
So
it comes in.
Yeah.
It's how we're wired.
Yeah.
When there's a disconnect in trying to understand the person you're with, it's going to end up broken. So if a man receives love as respect, then what are you respecting? What are you trusting? You're trusting him as a man. You're trusting his wisdom. You're trusting his leadership, because at the end of the day, 2 is an even number, right? When you think about a company, think about, when a company has shareholders, right? And when something needs to move forward, sometimes the structure of the company is, hey, majority of the shareholders have to agree to this decision so that we can move things forward. Now, when you are dealing with even numbers, who's majority? Because unless it's unanimous, but what happens when we don't see eye to eye? Someone has to say, okay, I'm going to trust your leadership. I'm going to trust your decision in this. And it's not that they don't make sacrifices. That's not what I'm saying. It's not that they don't make decisions that will favor their wife and they don't agree with it. That's not what I'm saying. But what I mean is, when you remove leadership, there must be a structure of leadership in any institution for it to work. In a company, you have to have a CEO. Right? In a university, you have to have a dean, right? So for any institution to work, there must be a clear order of leadership. It has to happen. If not, it's going to be chaotic. And marriage is also an institution. Yes, we're partners, but for this to work, at some point, I have to recognize and honor your leadership in the home.
And do you think that that's partly what is necessarily going wrong, I would say, right
Yes.
now, where everyone thinks a relationship needs to be equal, which means that you make decisions together and there isn't a follower and a leader. And because of that, when you come to conflict, it's hard to have a resolution.
And that's when you have irreconcilable differences as the cause of divorce.
That's so true. And in thinking about just what you're saying on like a very tiny, small little level, a few weeks ago, both of my 2 puppies, I got a new puppy, and both of my dogs got kennel cough. And I turned to Tom and I was like, so they're getting medication. And I was like, oh, what do we do, babe? Now, I'm very capable of thinking through it. I'm very capable of making the decision. But we've decided that he's the head of the family. And I like that. And so I trusted his opinion, where I was like, okay, well, what are we going to do? And he suggests, and he asked me my advice. He's like, what do you think about this idea? And I was like, to be honest, I don't know. So we should definitely just follow you. And so that, I get why you can take one little thing like that. You have that day in, day out, day in, day out for 2 years and 9 months. That is the statistic. I can actually, in fact, totally see how if you don't have a
if you
leader,
don't have it's going to break. Because leadership also brings vision. Without vision, you can't. There's no movement. Without vision, there's only so far I can go without getting hazy. And that's how people wake up and they're like, wait, why am I in this? Right? Being a good leader is not about a trump card. It's not about, I'm the leader, so it's what I say. No, it's how you love. It's that you are so mindful of your wife that in your decision making, she's factored in. But there's also this understanding that, wow, she trusts me. And because of her trust and confidence in me, I could lay it off for her. Most men, when you talk to them, they're very territorial in nature, right? They're wired to defend, to protect, to care. And so that is activated when they feel respected and they feel trusted. When they feel like they have to go head to head with you, you become a roommate. Then there's nothing to protect, because now we're always going head to head. At some point, it's going to break.
There's something actually that I really want to address. And this is like one thing that I really respect about you, is being able to have the honest conversations. My husband was out one day and he was walking through like these double doors, and he sees this woman come, walking towards him. So he holds the door open for her. And it's a little distant, so he's a little uncomfortable. He's holding the door a little too long. But again, he's a gentleman, so he's very respectful to women. The woman walks up to him, snatches the door out of his hands, closes it again, and says, I can open my own door. So to your point of, I think the leadership it can be a beautiful thing if someone doesn't abuse it.
Yeah.
But right now, there is a world where there are some women that perceive any leadership by a man as oppression.
And even when you say that, there are women who perceive that as oppression, that already tells you there's trauma. So if I'm seeing someone do a kind gesture, it's a kind gesture. You're opening the door for me. That's a kind thing. If I go so far to the point that I'm like, you know what? I'm going to go out of my way, close the door, reopen the door, and let you know I can open my own door. There's hurt layered underneath that. There's trauma layered underneath that. That needs to be healed. It's not a natural response of a woman. It's a response that comes from pain. It's a response that comes from being overlooked. And so because of that, it's defensive. So there's something you feel like you have to defend your worth. You have to defend, your place as a woman to say, hey, I belong. I'm not someone who just needs to be kept at home. And so when you boil down to what is she defending, then you look at where value has been removed. So if a woman feels like I need to open my own door to defend my worth, and so there's something about my worth that in society they don't value. There's something about who I am as a woman that is not valued in society, that is not valued from the experiences that she's had with men in her life, that she has to go out of her way to respond in a manner that's very defensive. And so you see the woman doing that and you have compassion. That what has she been through to make her feel like she has to go out of her way to prove a point in that manner.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you for talking through that, because I think that's really powerful because I really am worried about the younger generation. I don't want to sound like a really old person that's like, I'm worried. Where like, but the truth is that when I heard that story, I asked my husband how old was she, because I was like, no way. I like almost said it. No way is this woman over 40.
Yeah.
Because there's something about more, I think, and I'm just going to put myself in this bucket. I'm 44 years old. I grew up with chivalry being the top thing. You saw that in movies. You saw chivalry. Obviously, we got taught a lot of bad things as well, but you did see chivalry. And so I was just worried. And so he said, yeah, she was 20 years old. And I was like, okay, that makes sense.
And even when you think about it, it's like, even for me, right? I mean, my early 30s, growing up, I grew up in a Nigerian culture. When I used to think of like women in the kitchen, if it was like a place of oppression because the man just assumed that she should cook. So as I was getting older, it was like passed down trauma. So then I'm thinking, the moment, a man just asked me like, hey, do you know how to cook? I get defensive. Why is that the question you want to find out? And he's not coming with any harm, but there's passed down trauma. So then you have this situation where you're going out of your way to not wanting to be that person. And then I realized I actually enjoy cooking.
Once you were able to, but that's actually really powerful.
And then you realize like, wait, I'm just trying to fight off this idea that the only place of a woman is in the kitchen. I'm fighting off so much that I'm running away from something I actually like to do.
Oh my God, I love that so much. But let's go through the other ones of what we should look for in order to, in a partner. I'm going to say husband because for the sake of this discussion. So number one is leadership. You also talk number two, which is loyalty.
Yes.
Talk to me about loyalty.
Yeah, he has to be a loyal partner. And loyalty is not seen only in the marriage. Loyalty is seen in the boundaries created, even when dating. There's habits, there's character, there's integrity that must be looked at. And so if while you're in that dating phase, there's no boundaries, there's no healthy boundaries, the things that you're not comfortable with are not respected. For example, I think the most common thing in relationships is when you see whether the woman or the man, and maybe there's an ex that it was a big thing and they're not comfortable with like, hey, I don't like the fact that you and your ex maybe hang out and have lunch or whatever. If he's not willing to make sacrifices for you, to respect the boundaries that would sustain a healthy home emotionally, then you really have to look into that. Because one of the things I truly believe, no man just wakes up or woman just wakes up and say, you know what, today is a great day to cheat on my spouse.
Yeah, I hope not, at least.
Nobody does that. And so a lot of times infidelity, even as a pastor, I have counseled, many couples, and a lot of times infidelity is the fruit of lack of boundaries. And so boundaries, what I encourage people to do, I'm like, you don't put boundaries because you don't trust yourself. You put boundaries to make sure that there's a lesser version of you that shows up sometimes. And when that version of you shows up, there must be something that has already been sustained and you're consistent in that you don't default to. And what is that lesser version of a person? The person who, finds themselves unhappy. because you might wait. Happiness has to do with things that are happening in a home. And there are moments where your spouse might be going through a hard time. Your spouse might be depressed. Families can experience a loss of a child, a loss of a loved one, a loss of a parent. There are moments where you can go into a deep depression. There are moments where maybe you and your spouse are just not seeing eye to eye. There are moments where it could be even just, the sexual chemistry is off because of whatever reason. There's a lesser you that shows up in that moment. And if you don't have boundaries, then your default is, you know what, I'm going to text my ex and share how unhappy I am. And that opens the door for someone else to say, oh, I can get him back. I could get her back. You have no idea what's on the other side of that text message, what the person is thinking, what they're processing, where they're at emotionally, right? And so when you look at it, you don't put boundaries just because, you're like, I would never do that. No, there's another version of you that could be weak, that could be insecure, that could be trying to get revenge or whatever, that could be looking to, I'm just going to put it in your face or whatever. When that person shows up, if there's nothing in place, you're going to default to something that will cross the line.
Most people aren't that transparent and honest.
Yeah.
That is super powerful to think about, and to think that everybody's like that. Yeah. And so when you think about the boundaries, it is for your own sake, right? Is that, a lesser you, but also your partner's lesser version may show up. So talk to me about then temptation. When you're looking for a partner that you feel like, okay, are they going to be the right person for me? Because I don't believe that we should ever settle. I don't think that we should ever take whatever's given to us. It's like, who do you deserve? And then how do you find them? So as we think through the being able to trust somebody, how would you even know, as you get to meet somebody, whether they're the type of person that would take temptation versus do the work and set the boundaries?
It's in conversations, right? That's why I think it's very healthy for people to engage with each other, to learn how they think. First of all, we're like a social media generation. The first time you might meet a person, the next question is, oh, what's your social media? So you're experiencing them from pictures and videos. You're experiencing them from their highlight reel. And so many times I've literally seen where two people meet. And the next thing is, hey, are you on Instagram? What's your social media? Whatever. And the moment that's exchanged, the version they fall in love with is not the person in front of them, is the reels. They're falling in love with the idea of a person based on what you're experiencing from social media. So you would realize, it always blows me away when I'm sitting with couples and there were questions they never asked each other. They just assumed because of seeing how their lives were through social media. Even down to, do you want kids? Many couples don't ask that.
That's crazy to me that people wouldn't have that discussion.
Just, do you want kids? Because it's like, there is this, you fall in love with the idea of what you want, that your blind spots become, like the key things in a relationship, it becomes your blind spots. You're not asking that anymore because you're like, oh my gosh, I can't wait to start a life with you because there's one thing you hone in on. I can't wait for us to travel the world together. And that is the picture you have of marriage. I can't wait for us to experience these things together. And that alone is the picture. And so even when you talk about, looking, how do you know that this is not a person that will fall into temptation? People need to talk to each other. Ask questions about their past relationships. Ask questions, have they ever cheated? How would they respond to, how they respond to someone who, to cheating or things like that. Ask questions about their relationships with their exes. Where is it at? Have they ever gone back to an ex? Like, there are things that you want to know. How old were they when they did that? And so you want to unpack the mind of the person that you're with, because no one rises above their thought life.
No one.
How you think is how you will live. Who you are is reflected by how you think. No one rises above that. And so if you really want to know a person, find out what's in their head. Ask questions about the things that matter to you. Find out how they respond to it. Because if not, it will show up in the marriage. At some point, it will show up.
With the loyalty thing, I have realized that when people, and I'm curious to hear your thoughts. If someone isn't loyal, usually they'll show jealousy towards their partner. Have you noticed that? And then what is your take on jealousy and within a relationship? And I can only just say for myself, I just think jealousy is like a poison to a relationship.
No, I think jealousy is very destructive by nature to both parties, because even the idea, being disloyal in a marriage, right? you can only give who you are to yourself, right? You cannot give beyond how you also value yourself. For example, if I see this cup, right, and I'm jealous of the person who manufactured this cup, it would be an odd thing to be jealous about.
Yes, it would.
I would only be jealous about it because I may have had a dream one time to manufacture cups. I may have had a dream that I wanted these cups to be pink. I wanted them to have this shape and this curve, but I didn't believe in myself enough to do it. I didn't think I had the resources or the relationships or the right people to go to. I had this dream, but I didn't have the knowledge to back it up. And here you are manufacturing the very cup I desired. So when I see you, you are a reminder of my failure. And you are a reminder of a dream that was never fulfilled. Because what people are jealous about varies. No two people are always jealous about the same thing. So it tells you that even the heart behind it is unique to the individual. And so why is it unique? There's something about what you're jealous about that actually speaks to what you were once passionate about. If I have a spouse, for instance, if I'm jealous of a spouse that is very outgoing, very, a people person, can strike a conversation with anyone, and I have jealousy towards that person, then there's something in my past that it stirs up. Maybe as a kid, I wanted to be the person who was jovial and had a lot of friends, but no one really liked me, and X, Y, and Z. And even though I try to strike conversations, people don't really know what I'm talking about. And here is my spouse just always excited. Everyone just comes to them. So there is something about jealousy that is unique to the person, because what one person is jealous about, another person is inspired about. And so what is the difference in that factor? It's if you felt like this thing, I no longer have the ability to do it. This is a dead dream. This is a dead desire. This is a failed ambition. Now it turns to the negative, which is jealousy. But if I see this cup and I'm passionate about, I want to manufacture cups, and I have hope about it, then this would inspire me. Now, meeting the person who designed the cup, I'm like, I want to pick your brain. Like, hey, what made you choose this shape and that shape? While another person's in the corner upset. And so it really boils down, and that's why you want to know, you want to learn your spouse before you even get to the place of I do. You want to learn what were their triggers? How did they grow up? What was the trauma in their lives? Do they love themselves? Are they living a life that they're proud of? Because if they're not, and you are, there's going to be unspoken tension because it's going to stir it up. What needs to heal? And maybe that needs to be attended to before the marriage. Right? And so even when people do things like premarital counseling, and so there are things that we need to unpack, because we have to get back to a place as a people that when we're saying that we want to be committed to a person, we're in it for life. And so for me to say I'm going to be committed for life, I've done my due diligence. I'm confident. I'm not just in it for one piece of the puzzle. It's just like if you're buying a family home. You don't just jump at the first property you see, because there's so many factors you're thinking about. There are things down the line. You're not just buying a family home for year 1. You're buying it for year 7, year 8, year 9. And so you really, there are many things you consider before you make that kind of commitment. If you're buying an investment property and it's short term, you don't really consider much. That's like the dating stage. I'm not even going to live here. I'm renting this out. It's not much that needs to be put into this. Matter of fact, you give someone else the job. You say, hey, you talk to agent, pick a place.
This is the best analogy I've ever heard about dating ever.
It's like, just pick a place for me. It's like when you're dating, you tell your friend, this is the kind of guy I like. Set me up on a blind date. It's an Airbnb. Set me up on a blind date. If I like it, I like it. If I don't, we don't love it. You move on. But you're not going to tell a friend, hey, pick a husband for me. And just have him at the altar, and I'll be down there, and I'll be right there. Nobody does that.
That's too funny.
Right? So if you really want to be in it for the long haul, then don't feel like there needs to be a rush, unless in a short time you're very confident. There's conversations you've had, there are things you understand, and you're very confident about the person that you're with.
Yeah, God, I've heard you say, like, a lot of people see marriage or just relationships, we'll wait and see.
Yeah, let's just see what happens.
Yeah.
And it doesn't work out, divorce.
Yeah. Yeah, but doing this work, and that's why I really wanted to go into the details of what does make a great husband, what does make a great wife or partner. because I do think sometimes we do go in with like, oh, this is just an Airbnb. Like, my contract is only for, it can be up. I can just like dismiss the contract if I want to. And so doing this work, I think really help a lot of people identify whether the person that they're choosing to spend their time with is going to have propensity to be a great person in the future. And if you don't do the work now and you walk into a relationship and you say, well, we'll wait and see, there's no surprise that the 2 year and 9 month mark becomes like the standard. Like it doesn't even get to 3 years because you've realized the work that maybe you'd hopefully done before is now showing itself.
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay, so we've gone over a man needs to be a leader and a man needs to be loyal. Okay, what's the third one?
He needs to be a provider. Culturally, right, people have different things that they lean towards too. I'll give an example. There are families, maybe they have kids and he chooses to be a stay-home dad, right? And they understand that it doesn't hurt the family financially. They've worked it out. All of that is beautiful. There are situations where, and it all depends. Maybe the man has sacrificed so much for the home and for the family that he's in a place where he's like, I really just want to pursue my dream. You know, I really just want to pursue this one thing. And in the beginning, maybe no income is coming, right? But he has to be a provider in the sense of it shows stability in the home. I mean, there are a lot of women are earning higher than their husbands, right? So it's not about the man having to be, you know, like the breadwinner or the highest earner, but to some degree, he needs to provide in the home because it also shows care. It shows leadership. And to whatever degree that whatever you can bring in, you should not be idle. You should not be behind a game all day. You know, we're in LA, right? And there's a lot of creatives in LA. And sometimes when it feels like nothing is happening, they're just like, okay, I'm just going to play games and visit my friends. No, you can be a creative and still earn. You can have dreams and still earn for your family. And I think that sometimes one of the biggest issues in marriages is finances. You know, when there's a financial strain or financial tension, for some women, they're just like, look, let me figure this out on my own rather than us trying to do this as a unit. But I think for men, one of the things I've personally seen as one of the biggest struggles for men is when they feel as though they're not finding jobs or they're not earning in a manner that is suitable to their experience or their resume or their abilities. They rather just wait and do nothing until they keep and do nothing. What I mean by that is keep searching for that thing, even though it may take years. And this is how the woman approaches the situation has to come with a lot of sensitivity and care, recognizing that the man is not just being idle because he doesn't have any ambition with his life, but men really struggle with their ego. Right. And it's like, how can I have all this experience and the job market is just not working for me? And so to do something that is beneath their resume feels like a failure as a man. But it's for them to be reminded, for you to be a provider in the home is success as a husband at whatever capacity, and still showing that, hey, I believe in you. I believe in your dreams. I believe in your goals. I'm going to support you with it. And we're going to figure this out. But at some capacity, the man should provide in the home because bills are real. You pay in cash, not in love or affection.
Damn it.
Right? Yeah. And so he has to show that, even when connected to his leadership, he can bring, he's bringing in finances to the home.
Yeah, I've heard you call it the lie of the enemy, that men believe that if they took a job that was, let's say, beneath their education or their resume, that it actually diminishes them as a man.
Yeah.
And I think that that's very important for women to know. Like, I try to never judge anyone.
Yeah.
Like, I really do. That is like one of my top goals because I used to be misjudgment, like growing up. Like, I felt judged all the time.
Yeah.
And as a defense mechanism, I judged other people to protect myself. But I've just always, like, as an adult, don't judge people's decisions.
Yeah.
And I think it's very important as we're talking about this, that as women, to understand what's happening to a guy when he loses his job, especially if being a provider is one of their core values. Because let's face it, as a woman, I know a lot of women that desperately want children and they can't conceive. And so what that does to a woman, you wouldn't want a guy to make her feel bad about not being able to conceive or having difficult conceiving. And so I think we do need to give guys the same grace in that. But even in discussing it, like whether you're the stay-at-home father or not, having that discussion, whereas I think a lot of relationships kind of wait and see. And it's like, okay, he loses his job, then the woman tries to take on the weight, but they're not actually discussing the real thing. And so now she's just trying to take it on. She's trying to people please. She's trying to be there for her husband, but now she's breaking.
She's stressed because she's falling apart. And and at the same time, the man would not be so quick to show that it's the weight, how it's affecting him, because then sometimes they think that that weakness shows instability in the home.
Yeah.
And so I think and this is so valuable, I believe, for women, because even though you may have married a man who is like a solid provider, what happens when he loses his job while married? And working that sensitive place to not just walk away because it seems like he's just lazy, and to understand the heart behind it. That one thing that I'm very passionate about is understanding people, not just what they do, where it's coming from, why do we do what we do? So when you see someone who by nature is, takes pride in going to work, or takes pride in there's certain things that he knows that the moment I think of it, I can book it, I can get it done. And it goes from that to just being idle and being lazy and just being depressed and moaning around. You have to go beyond like how it's impacting you, because that could be stressful, but also where is he at emotionally and what is he hiding? And could it be that maybe I'm not a safe space for him to open up to, because he could see it on my face that I'm irritated by the situation. And so how does he fully open up, Yeah,
because you're not hiding it when you get irritated.
When a woman is irritated, she doesn't hide it. Everything is done with attitude. How she closes the fridge, you would know. How she opens the wall, everything is done with a little bit of attitude.
It's so funny you say that. The other day I slammed the door and my husband was like, was everything okay? I was like, I so didn't mean to, it was the wind. But he just totally perceived it of okay, that means it's energy.
Something is going on. What's going on?
Yeah. The earth shifted beneath his feet when the door slammed. Okay, talk to me about then the power of the guy being the protector.
The protector. That is so key, because, I have seen, and it's unfortunate, right? But I have seen where there is this commentary where, if a man abuses a woman in any way, maybe hits her or whatever, even down to whether it's physical, whether it's sexual, whether it's emotional, there is sometimes this idea of well, what did she do? Let's figure out, what did she do? How did she, did she rile him up? Did she do X, Y, and Z? And I'm like, okay, I look at it, I love analogies, right? I have a daughter, right? I love my daughter. She's going to get older. She's going to be a teen. And one day she's maybe talking back at me and she's giving me sass and, and God forbid, I never hit my mom or anything like that, but God forbid that she just hits me. I would never touch her. And because no matter how she's acting, there is a love for her that is so deep embedded in me that I will still respond from love. For me to hit her or put her in a place what are you doing? Then where I'm coming from, that's not coming from love. That's coming from bitterness. It's coming from hate. It's coming from something else outside of love. And so when a man, being a protector, when men sometimes may try to make it about well, she riled me up and she did this and she did that. No, if you loved her, if you truly love her, your response will show it. Walk away. Get out of the vicinity if you feel so if what's in your head is to be aggressive, then what is in your heart should lead. So what is in your heart? Is this someone you love? But then it goes a little deeper, because how do you also feel about yourself? If you love yourself, there are certain things that you already set as boundaries for your own life. Because if I love myself, there's some things I will not do because I know the consequences of that. And I care about how I show up in society. I care about how I show up in my family. I care about what is true to me, that I would not even give in to that, even if you tempt me with it. But if a man really struggles with self-love, it's going to show up in his marriage. It's going to show up in how he responds to her. It's going to show up in how he treats her, whether it's physical abuse, whether it's sexual abuse, whether it's emotional abuse, whether it's mental abuse. It's going to show up, because you cannot give what you don't have.
In thinking through that, how men want to be respected, you said that earlier, is like a love language thing. I think women want to feel safe.
Exactly. Women's love language is safety. Yeah. Women's love language is stability. And sometimes men think it's finance. No, women are making their own money. It's not. I think finances is it's there, but it's not at the very top. At the very top, emotionally, I should feel safe here. I should feel like my voice can be heard. I should feel like we can talk through things without it being this blowout. I shouldn't feel like I need to walk, like I'm walking on eggshells around you. There's a safety that a woman craves. And so for the men, you cannot bring that safety if you are functioning from trauma, if you are functioning from, a lack of emotional maturity. And this is not about perfection, right? But it's to say when you know what's broken, you both can work on that together for the healing. You can talk through it. It's not a hidden place in his life, because what destroys many relationships is secrets. Secret becomes the puppet master to the relationship. It is the thing that controls him without outside of his will, because there is a secret he's hiding from you that he's functioning from. But when it's all in the open, then that's where healing comes in. So when you find out, like, hey, let's talk through, like, because women will be surprised that there are more men who were sexually molested, who have been through abuse, whether it's physical, whether it's emotional or sexual. But because we also have this, idea that we want him to be the man, we're not seeking for where is he weak? Because if I understand the areas in his life that cause, whether it's pain or harm or whatever, and we can talk about that and he can share that, then there is light. It's not hidden. It's not a dark place in the room. This is not the thing that is going to control him. No, we can walk through healing together, right? But outside of that, if a man's brokenness is in the dark, it is going to pull strings at him. And that's why oftentimes when people wonder, why do women stay in an abusive relationship? Because they've also seen the other side of him. They've also seen the side that is loving, that is good, that is this. But why we tell women to get out is because, yes, you've seen that love inside, but there's something else controlling him beyond that. God forbid, it could be fatal, right? But what I would encourage for the woman is understand the layers of the man you're with. Understand if there's trauma, if there's pain, if there were issues with, his relationship with his parents, with siblings, with things that may have happened to him when he was younger. All those things matter, because when it's in the light, it can be healed.
It's so beautiful, and I haven't really spoken much about that type of thing on this show, really, about the traumas that men go through. Yeah. And I have a lot of compassion, because I am very often talking about from the female perspective, that when we were younger, we were taught, being brought up Greek Orthodox, I was taught, you're going to be a stay-at-home wife, you're going to have kids, you submit to your husband, you obey him. And when I went and introduced my grandmother to my husband for the first time, because she couldn't come to our wedding, she pulled me aside and she was like, I'm going to tell you the words that, like the words of wisdom, if you will. And I was like, all right, what's grandma got to say? And she turned around and she said, if he hits you, don't worry, maybe you deserved it. That came from my grandmother. Yeah. So I'm very much of the traumas that women go through and the messaging that's been passed down. But we don't talk about the guys. We don't talk about the fact that if a young boy falls and, hurts himself, that they've been told, suck it up, be a man. And like understanding that they too have the trauma.
They're functioning from, because that little boy, imagine that little boy who they're like, hey, if you fall, get up, suck it up, you'll be all right. That's a little boy that you're teaching that your emotions don't matter. And then he gets into adulthood and he's just pent up with all this emotional tension and feeling as though his, how he thinks about a thing doesn't matter, and so I've met men who have never cried, and it's like, no, I can't do this. I can't. And it shows up in their attitudes. It shows up because you're not healthy. You're not whole. And so you're going to function from that place. And until we get to the root of like, hey, what's going on here? Like, at what point did you embrace a toxic way of thinking as truth or as healthy? Because you're functioning from this place. That's why even as a pastor, I encourage therapy, because there are things that people need to get to the root of what happened, that you need to even process, that you just kind of shove somewhere in the back of your memory. Is like, no, that never happened. I'm just trying to get it done. But if you don't pause to reflect, how did I get here? How did I become this person? Right? The other day I was in an Uber and I was talking to I had a female driver, and she was telling me these decisions that she had made with her life. Right. And I was like, okay, I respect that. She was just sharing with me. And then we started talking about her family, and we talked about her mom and the relationship between her and her mom. And she just breaks down crying, while driving. And I'm like, and she was like, I'm so sorry. I said, no, this is perfectly okay. And we're just talking it through. And so she had mentioned that she was like, yeah, my husband and I said we'd never want to have kids. And I'm like, I respect that. I don't think everybody, some people never want to get married. Some people never want to have kids. I think to each their own, right? There's many, what people bring to the world is so different. And how people do that it varies. And so we're just having a regular conversation. And so there was something that kept prompting me, like, hey, ask her about her mom. So I said, you know what? And so as she's talking to me, and I'm like, you know what? How is the relationship with your mom? You know, how is that? And she goes into when they were kids and how the mom was never there. And, you know, when she would have all these events or recitals or things, the mom never showed up. The mom was very abusive. And when we got into the meat of the conversation, that was where she broke down. And that's when she realized, wait, I didn't want to have kids because of how my mom treated me as a child. And she just, and I was like, it's okay. But that's why I call secrets the puppeteer. Because what you keep in a dark place, you have no clue that is what is pulling your strings. Mm-hmm. And it's just telling you, do this, do that, because you don't want to go there. You don't want to touch it. It's like, no, this never happened. This didn't exist. No, you need to open that door. You need to find out what is in that closet, because it's causing you to live a life that you don't even understand why you're functioning that way. Mm-hmm. So it's the same thing with men.
But yeah, I mean, they don't address it, right? Because then the shame's going to come in,
Shame,
the embarrassment,
guilt, and all these things. But when you unpack it, and I think that's why it's healthy to even not just unpack it with yourself, because when you're by yourself, then all these thoughts may start coming in. But in truth, there's nothing to be ashamed of. And that's the lie of the enemy. The lie is, hey, don't touch it, because what comes with that is going to make you feel defeated. Don't touch it, because how could that happen to you? Why did that happen to you? Was there something you did? And so there are all these ghosts that we imagine it's right in front of that door. It's like, no, I can't go there. It's scary. No, open the door and unpack all those secrets. Talk to somebody about it and get it out of you so that there is light that touches it. And from there, there's conversations that happen that can help you to heal. At least it could activate that journey of healing.
That's so powerful. And understanding what shame can do.
Yeah.
And then figuring out, how do I not build the shame? So for me, knowing that secrets really do then like actually breed the shame, I make sure that I don't have them in those secrets. But kind of going back to the guy being the protector, and then the boundaries is what you were saying, that actually what hit me was when I first met my husband, I had laid out what are the things I'm just not going to accept in a relationship. Like, what do people say? Like, oh no, love should be unconditional. Like, no, I'm absolutely going to have conditions to my marriage. And the conditions are that if you ever cheat on me, I'm out the door. I won't give you a chance to explain. And that you never, not only do you never hit me, but you never raise your hand to me. And the reason being is I knew how much importance the word safety meant to me. And if the guy in my life was to even threaten me, now you've taken away the safety element that I seek and strive for in a relationship. So I actually put that non-negotiable boundary in my relationship before we even got married, because I knew the protector piece is very important. And let's always be honest with, I love that women want to be independent. I love that women want to be powerful. But for me, I'm just like, no, if someone breaks into my house, I absolutely look to my husband to protect me. Like, I think I'm a pretty badass, but I still look to my husband.
Honestly. There's some things that you're going to be like, babe, what's up?
I said, intruders and spiders. Okay, now going to the fifth one that you say that if you find a partner that has this and that will really make your relationship much better, is the learner.
Yeah.
Why is that one important?
It's important because I think the worst thing for a woman to feel is compared. The worst thing that makes a woman unsafe is feeling that she is being called to, to act a certain way, live a certain way, because she's being compared to someone else. And even being compared to the idea of someone else is a problem. And so being a learner is to learn your spouse. Learn who they are, learn what they're about, right? I love the book of the 5 love languages. There's wisdom even given in that book about, hey, find out what is her love languages, because the way I may give love is not the way you're going to receive love. And so first, let me learn how you receive love. Let me also learn how you give love, because the man may feel, you're not also seeing him or whatever, because he doesn't understand that when you do this, it's you actually showing him, hey, I love you. And this is me thinking about you, right? But also learning her triggers, learning what are the things that make her feel like just, get quiet? What are the things that will cause her to feel like she has to get defensive, and not just looking at it from a place of, you need to stop being defensive. What are you defending? What did I hurt in this moment that made you feel like you need to put a wall? Because you only pull walls to protect something. So what do you feel like you're trying to protect? Right? And so when a man becomes a learner of his wife, It doesn't mean that if she has toxic traits or toxic behaviors that it's like, oh, okay, that's just my wife.
Right. It doesn't mean you just accept the behavior.
It doesn't mean you accept the behavior, but when you understand it, you can speak to it. And you can speak to it in truth. Not speaking to it in theory or speaking to it in the illusion of what someone else has painted before you, but speaking to it in truth. But that stands with understanding who she is, you know, and it's little things. And I think for women, what that looks like is being vocal. Because sometimes he may just assume, not because he doesn't love you, but you can tell him, babe, you don't really know me. And I want us to like, and then see how he responds. If he's willing to learn you. Or if he's just like, no, whatever, you know. No, but see how even in that dating phase, see how he's like, hey, what do you like to do? Or X, Y, and Z. And if he hasn't, tell him, hey, you've never asked me what I like to do. Because we don't read minds. Women don't read minds, men don't read minds.
I was literally about to say though, Stephanie, it's like, look, I freaking love women. I have an entire show dedicated to women. But I'm also going to call us women, I'm going to throw myself in there, is that we always think the guy should know.
Yeah.
The first couple of years of my marriage, I was like, well, he should know.
You should know. You should know.
I've hinted 10 times.
How would he know?
The worst story or the most funny story in my life is I hinted to my husband that I wanted this watch. It was early days, so we had zero money and I was just hinting over and over again. Christmas comes, I open the gift, I think it's a watch. It's teeth whitening strips. I'm like, I hinted to get a watch and you got me teeth. And he goes, babe, you kept saying to me, I've hinted. And he's like, I thought I nailed it. That was the moment I realized though to never test my husband because he was heartbroken. He was like, I wanted to get you the Christmas gift that you wanted. You wouldn't tell me. You told me you hinted and I got it so wrong. I mean, it's the funniest story on the planet now, but he was so heartbroken. That was the lesson that I learned. Don't test. But women do. They wait to see if the guy's listening enough because that's the signal that they care.
Mm-hmm. And the thing too is that there are times where even when when we're trying to hint and we're like, okay, let's see, you know, if you picked up on everything, you don't even know if someone is like thinking of 1,000 things in that moment where you gave perfect hints, but they didn't catch it. Not because they didn't care.
And now I realize I just tell them and I'm like, this is my love language. This is meaningful. And then we see if they do it. If they don't do it, then they just haven't put the time.
Yeah, now we need to, you know, really work through that, right? But you have to make it plain. Make it plain to them. Like, hey, this is what, like, Frank, I remember I had this conversation with my husband. I never thought I was the person who needed words of affirmation. That was never at the top of my love language. And I think it's unique to him.
Yes.
That's when I started learning that what could be a general love language among friends and amongst peers is not what is my love language with my husband. So I never thought about that. And then I would realize, like, wait, did he say I love you today? And it could be so random. I'm like, oh, I really want to hear that. And so I was like, babe, you know, I never thought I was the person that needed words of affirmation. But when we had that conversation and he was like, oh, okay, I didn't, you know, because that's not what I need from friends or what I need from people in my life, but it's very unique to him. And then I started seeing him being more, and not from a robotic place where he just started communicating what is always in his heart, right? And so make it plain. Don't just, and then I think one of the mistakes we make is that we get angry and we allow the moment to bring a narrative that's a lie. So we allow the moment of, wait, why doesn't he know this? And then it causes us to like, I don't think he really cares for me. Then that takes root in our mind. And it begins to grow. And then any little thing that he does that just, you know, feels like, oh, see, yeah, he doesn't really care about me. Oh, and then you start it's like you only start looking for the problems. The same way that when, you know, you desire to buy a blue car, all you see is blue cars.
Yeah.
It's like, oh my gosh, that is a sign. No, they're always blue cars. So if you're only looking for something to validate this lie, all you're going to see is problems with everything he does. And sometimes if you don't check that in the early stages and it gets to stage 2, stage 3, stage 4, and it's like, okay, there's nothing now. And sometimes what even ends marriages started off as a little lie that was planted from a false narrative of an action. And that's why these things are so important that we also take accountability. Like, wait, did I communicate? Right? Let me not just assume you should know. I've known me for 30 plus years. You've known me for 2. I should tell you what I want. I should just assume you should know what I want.